With me now in the studio is Australia's 24th Prime Minister, Paul Keating. Good to see you, Mr Keating.
How are you, Leigh?
We just heard there from John Daly at the Grattan Institute saying that the way super is currently working, people will enjoy even better living standards in their retirement than they do in their working lives currently. Is that how you see it?
No. When I introduced superannuation 32 years ago, people retired about 65 and they died about 83 or 85. In the 30 years since, people are living 3 to 5 years longer. So people now live into their late 80s and the superannuation pool isn't large enough to maintain the sort of standard of living we wished for them. Superannuation, this is where John Daly doesn't get it with his miserable view about having the two Australias. The privileged Australia, where wealthy people can have all sorts of assets, but ordinary people are condemned to the pension. This is $460 a week. I mean, don't whoop it up on $460 a week. This is the John Daly view of the world. What I had intended and what we are seeing is that we have a new community standard where people have some equation between the ordinary working people of Australia and those that have got wealth. In other words, they're not just simply condemned to the age pension, where Daly's recommending people retire, work till 70, put their house in the assets test where now it isn't. In other words, you eat your house, work till 70, eat your house, and then basically find yourself at a certain point in your life where you just don't have financial assets. The other thing is that we've just been through we went through the global financial crisis. Central banks around the world have reduced interest rates to such low levels now. An American Treasury bond brings 3.2% now. When the big equities boom we're currently in finishes, we're going to go back to the low interest rates for the next 20 years or so. Try living on 3.2%. I mean, 9.5% is super, won't cut it.
Will 12% cut it?
Barely cut it. 12% would have cut it quite easily if the funds were earning, say, 7% a year. But you can take 1 percentage point off that now, basically to about 6, because, you know, bonds will be paying 3, 3.25, maybe 4. And so, you know, the big Australian funds today are earning 10, 11% a year. 10, 11 compared to 4.
There might be some Australians watching who are saying, well, if we're talking about 12%, why can't my employer give me that 12% and it's up for me to decide, do I put it on my mortgage, do I put it into super, what do I do with it?
Well, the thing is, they're not giving it, Leigh. You see, for the last 4 years, nearly 5, we've had no real wage increases. Inflation's been 1.9% and wages have been 1.9%. But the employers have had 10% productivity in that period. So the employers are sitting on 10%, 10 percentage points, but the gift of productivity to wages growth has been 0.
Is it greed? Is it?
It's the way, it's the bargaining power changes. We don't quite know why, but if we were to devote 2.5 percentage points of super, 2.5 to super, in other words, we go from 9.5 to 12, it's 2.5 of the 10. So Daly's point is wrong. What Daly says, and he makes these outrageous claims without any basis in fact. You know, it's basically a nasty polemic. What he says is, if you get super, you forego a wage increase. In fact, the employers could afford to pay the 2.5% this week. And it still only use a quarter of the productivity that they have pocketed in the last 5 years.
You point out, though, that even if they went to the 12%, you've still got low returns on investment that are going to come into play. You've floated the idea then for a national insurance scheme to help cover this shortfall where people are living longer. How would that actually work?
Well, you see, when I designed super, as I said earlier, people retired about 65 and died about 85. But your children, particularly your children, and my children will probably now live to 100 or 105. The pool of money runs out about 85. The super pool at 12% will run out about 85, or maybe you could stretch it to about 90. But once you get into your 90s and noughties, there's nothing to support you but the basic pension. So what I believe we should have a longevity levy, not superannuation, but a national insurance scheme where we have a modest levy like the Medicare levy, and what that modest levy does is pick you up once you pass 85, which guarantees you income support, aged care accommodation and health. Because when the super money has run out, when you don't have any income support and you're heading for the basic pension, then all these costs start mounting up on you, you know, diagnostic imaging and pathology, accommodation. So how an insurance scheme would work is that people contribute 1 or 1.5%. People who die earlier subsidise those who die later. So someone that dies at 55, their contribution subsidises somebody who lives to 105. Just like insurance, just like fire insurance. Everyone pays for insurance in the street. 30 houses, 2 houses burned down over 20 years. The other 28 houses pay for it.
Is that kind of safety net not what the aged pension is meant to do?
Well, see, the aged pension, it's a very important question. The aged pension, Leigh, is an anti-destitution pension. And I've designed the super system to keep the aged pension. See, you get the aged pension in Australia is not related to your income. You would get the aged pension if you've never worked in Australia. If you have never been in the workforce, or if you've been in the workforce and left the workforce, you get the aged pension. It's not income related. Where the European pension system, your pension is related to your contributions against your income at work. So the aged pension is a great social block, but it is an anti-destitution payment, and super is meant to build on that. So we want, in a wealthy society like Australia, where the economic system can produce enough wealth to give people flexibility in retirement. You know, let's say, you know, your hot water system blows up. You know, it's going to cost you $15,000 to replace it. Your son or daughter get married in Europe and you want to go to the wedding. You know, under the daily proposition, you get nothing. You know, if you've got your nest egg and your super, you can have some of the flexibility in retirement that a country like Australia should afford you.
We've seen this tension in the system between the retail and the industry funds, people now leaving retail funds to go to industry ones. What do you think about that? Well,
the industry funds are not-for-profit funds. The retail funds are for-profit funds. And they have a trustee, so the trustee should be getting the best deal for all the people in the retail fund, which means investing in other businesses and other funds, but they don't do that. They just invest in the bank, and they've been bank funds, ANZ, NAB, Commonwealth, etc. So basically the trustee structure in the retail funds is a joke. It's a joke. And I think the Royal Commission will probably recommend that structure changes.
Super is very complex. A lot of Australians find it difficult to understand. How do you make the case for big changes like this in an environment of, you know, 24/7 news and social media? And
I know. Look, the more changes, the more confused people become. You know, but if they at 9.5%, the compulsion means that the key to all wealth is compound earnings. It's the earnings on the earnings on the earnings, the interest on the interest on the interest. So about every 8 years, your super pool doubles. If you do nothing, you just leave it with one of the funds, it ought to double about every 8 years. So therefore, you know, there's a case for settling super down. It should be at 12%, and then that's for the 65 to 85s, and for the 85s to 105, we need a new non-super system, an insurance system. Here we are as a country. 25 years ago, I wanted to set up a post-85 to 105 insurance system for aged care and aged income and aged accommodation. It still hasn't happened all these years later.
Mr. Keating, pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed.